Light color.
There's a season pass.
Season pass. Yep, there is. $40. I think it's a bad idea. I think the wave of
Oh
the
fuck.
future. Yeah, wait for a future for multiplayer games. I think is if they want to monetize that stuff. I think the. I mean, people are gonna hate this, but microtransactions honestly is better than DLC because I mean, look at like a game like Call of Duty, for example. It goes the season pass route, which is kind of the established formula now. And then on the other hand, you can look at something like Halo 5, which goes the microtransaction route. A lot of people bitch about Halo 5's microtransaction route, but here's what's good about it is that, allows them to make money, which I honestly, if it was up to me, don't charge people this shit at all. But
I think expansion packs work best, honestly.
and expansion packs are basically just bigger DLC packs. Like that's what a season pass essentially is now, is like buying an expansion pack, but instead of getting all the content at once, they're going to segregate it and give it out through the year because they want to maintain interest in the game over a longer term period. And part of the reason for that is because if they don't maintain that interest, they have to, they're not going to be able to sell the game at the same price for as long. So, the games tend to get discounted more quickly and therefore less money for them, right? So they want to maintain that interest so that people will still be willing to pay $60+ for a game. And the season pass is a way that they try to do that, which honestly, not everybody buys into it, obviously. But anyways, the whole thing is, the reason why I like the microtransaction model somewhat better is, okay, say like, for instance, you and your buddies all get the latest Call of Duty game. And so you get the latest Halo game, and the Call of Duty obviously has the season pass. Halo has the microtransaction route now. So say one of you guys couldn't afford the season pass for Call of Duty, for example. Let's say they released the first season pass expansion. Usually they're pretty cool about still having maps and matchmaking and things like that set up to where even if you don't have the DLC yet, you can still play all the other content that's already been released. And you can play in specific playlists for that stuff. But Activision, at least, seems to have a tendency to, as they start releasing more and more DLC from that season pass, they'll start to separate players. Because, obviously the people that are playing the season pass, they want to be able to buy this content. Or play this content that they're paying $50 for. They want to actually be able to play it. And the only way they can play it is that those game maps and everything like that come up in the actual, actual playlists. And so instead of having the segregated playlists, they start integrating everything together. And they'll still have like a playlist set for like specific, base mode game. But eventually over time they get rid of it. So if you try to go back and play a Call of Duty game like, say, World at War would be a good example. Or not World at War, but like, let's say Black Ops. Because I think Black Ops is the one they actually introduced the season pass model, where they actually had a full 4 expansions and all that good stuff. You try to go play the original Black Ops, at least on consoles, and unless you're doing custom map setups and things like that, you're probably not going to get into a match. Because the game is so diluted now with the playlist setup that you're going to regularly get kicked. I mean, like, if the playlist comes up with a map that is in the base game, you'll be able to play fine. But then the next match, it might load up a map that is part of one of the DLC packs, and if you don't have it, you're automatically booted from the game. And you're going to constantly run into those issues with those games. On the other hand, the microtransaction model means everybody gets the maps for free. So you don't ever have that possibility where you get separated from your friends just because you couldn't afford to buy some DLC pack. Now, you might have to grind a little bit versus them if they buy microtransactions and you don't, or something like that. But at the very least, you have that opportunity, that you can actually play together and not be separated from each other. So I think that's what's really cool about it. That's the model that I think the industry is going to follow. I think that, except for the biggest games like COD and whatnot, I think the season pass model is going to go the way of the dodo. It's basically like MMOs that are pay-to-play MMOs. Those are on the way out, basically. There's only World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy 14. Every other, and Final Fantasy 11, I guess, too, is still doing it, but basically every other MMO does not have a option that keeps out free-to-play. They have pay-to-play as well as free-to-play or free-to-play only. And so that's just kind of where it's going to go. They're going to either have to... at the very least, they're going to have to make maps free if they want to keep a multiplayer community alive. I mean, if they want to add, like, maybe some exclusive weapons and shit like that only Season Pass holders can get, I don't know, that might be tricky, but I guess it could work. It depends on if those weapons are going to affect the balance of the game in a negative way or not. Like, are the people that get those weapons, are they going to have some kind of advantage in the game? If so, then yeah, that'll hurt it. But I mean, separating people from maps is definitely a killer blow to your game. So that's why I don't expect this game will have a lifespan of any more than 6 months for a serious multiplayer community. I think that's being generous, even with the snap map feature. Because I mean, the snap map feature is really cool, but let's be honest, this is not the first game that's had a map-making mode. I mean, this stuff's been around in online multiplayer games where it's built into the game since, I believe, Far Cry since Time Splitters. That game had a freaking map editor. But at least the game that had actual online multiplayer as well as a map editor, I think it was originally introduced in Far Cry for the Xbox, like the original Xbox. So I remember that game had a map editor, had online play and all that stuff, and you can actually upload the maps and play them and everything like that. So, I mean, it's not something new. And then the feature got popularized with Halo 3's Forge mode. So that alone is not going to be enough to sustain an online multiplayer community. Now, single player, yeah, I can see maybe for single player and co-op maps, Snap Map might have some real chops, but it's not going to be able to save the game from this whole DLC nonsense that Bethesda decided to go with. Yeah, instead, the Season Pass should have literally been just new single-player missions. Maybe even Snap Map missions that are actually made by the developers to outline what the engine can really do. That kind of stuff. Or it could have been used to, obviously add more to that Snap Map feature. But making it as a multiplayer thing, that's going to really hurt it bad. Because they've already announced it's going to have new maps for that. So obviously you're going to have that community segregation. And that's just going to give you a lot less incentive to even want to buy the Season Pass in the first place. Knowing that, I don't know what the sales figures in this game are right now. Let's say 3 million people bought it. And let's say 500,000 of them decide to buy the Season Pass. So essentially, those are going to be the most hardcore players. They'll probably be the most likely to stick around to begin with. But they've already got a lot smaller pool to play with from the onset. I mean, that Season Pass DLC probably won't be around for a couple months at least. But by then, the player numbers will really start dropping. And that's when it's really crucial to make sure that they don't drop even further because of DLC segregating the community. So that's all I've got to say about that issue, I think.